Well, thank you for having me, Jan. I'm today very proud to present to you Berlin TXL, the Urban Tech Republic, and we're actually looking at the biggest smart city project in Europe at the moment. So let's have a look what we're on about and what kind of community we're going to try to establish at Berlin TXL. Is this happening? Oh, here we go. So this is the former or current airport, Berlin TXL, where you might have landed in the past. But soon you're going to be arriving not longer at TXL, but at a new international airport that is hopefully going to open quite soon. And that'll mean that a huge space in Berlin is going to open back up and be brought back into the city. So we're going to look at 500 hectares around about of primal inner city space to develop and form a living lab for urban technologies. So we have a campus in the center of it, so the old terminal buildings are going to be dedicated to research centers, universities, and startup centers. And then we'll have commercial and industrial spaces around it. So we'll have a whole value chain, really, from actually hatching the idea at the university or with the innovative spirits hanging around there, and then kind of bringing it up to production later on. There we go. So it's a big chunk of city we're actually looking at. So that's about 5% of the Cité de Paris, and that means it's so locally in the city that you're actually in 15 minutes with Angie, or in 10 minutes actually in the prime shopping center. So it's really a prime location. It's also located in the old industrial hub of Berlin. Berlin used to be the center in Germany for industry. So Siemens, IEG, all those companies were started in Berlin, and they were actually drawn from it after the war and obviously during the division of the city. So we're looking at a transforming city. Why are we looking at urban tech? Startups aim to disrupt business models, and we think it's time to actually rethink smart city and kind of rededicating it to what's essential, and that's the human component in it. So we're looking at the global trend of urbanization, and clearly it's huge. We're a bit proud in Berlin that we're also part of it, so we're still growing. But obviously the big chunks of urbanization are happening elsewhere, and we need solutions to actually tackle those challenges. So what are we looking at? We're looking at about a city that, cities that are going to have 52% of the global population living there. We have 80% of actually value creation in cities, and only 3% of actually the surface being covered. So that means cities have huge challenges to overcome. So resource scarcity, climate change, demographic change, and actually taking all those into account, we need to densify our cities. And how do we do that? We need smart technologies. So that means the mobility sector, energy sector, resource efficiency, but also new materials and ICT solutions to actually kind of look at these issues and kind of make cities work in a more sufficient and more sustainable way. So that's a massive market. Why would we not tap into that? And we need these new technologies to facilitate change. So we, as a planning company of the state of Berlin, we're actually developing our own infrastructure components to plug into that new campus that is developing there. So we have very smart infrastructure as the light pole. So that will going to have Wi-Fi in it. It will have a charging station. So that's a key backbone, basically, of the city infrastructure giving back to the different components of the city. So, but what other trends are we looking at? So automated driving will change our cities. We're going to have completely different models of moving through the city. So our campus will have to adapt to that. And if you are looking at ideas of how to plug into these trends, and if you think that maybe my robotics or AI system might need to be showcased in a public and big way, then Berlin TXL is the place to do that. So, for example, Beuth University is one of the Berlin universities. They'll be centered in Berlin TXL, and they'll be like focusing on their autonomous robots and kind of connect ecosystems and blockchain technologies into different things that we might look into with the universities and startups on ground. So one of the things we want to establish in Berlin TXL is also kind of give new technologies and ideas a place to pilot and trial. So why not print a city? There have been first trials of printing houses and buildings. So this is quite an early model, actually. It was quite slow going up, but it's getting more sophisticated and sophisticated. So 6 months later, technology was able to kind of present houses like that, got a bit more swanky in 2015. And now we're actually looking at like proper office buildings that can be printed in virtually days. So in Berlin TXL as well, we want to look at how to bring these technologies into the urban communities and actually onto the ground and actually make people experience it in an urban lab. And obviously Singapore is already steps ahead. They're doing complete high-rise public housing in 3D printing. We're not there yet, but maybe the offices in Berlin TXL will be. So actually, the fundamental shift in the way we get around in cities is very key. Obviously, Amsterdam is really far ahead with everything. They have their bicycles, but electrified mobility and shared mobility and autonomous mobility will play a huge part in Berlin TXL in trying out these concepts. So in Berlin, we're actually doing quite well with the shared component and the electrified component, and we're currently trying to rethink the public aspect of it. How do we locate and how do we move people through the city in an autonomous but shared vehicle that's not as big as a bus? So these components obviously are all based on our idea that the future is electric. And if electricity is renewable, then it's no longer evil. So let's electrify everything. And we have a couple of models here. So this is in 2000 when we started out, the wind energy in the north and the PV installations, kind of looking a bit sparse, but look at that development of it growing and growing. And the poor guy who was kind of like tallying up the points and the systems in Germany got kind of sick of it. So he stopped in 2015, and now we're already in 2017, so I think we're way past 3 million renewable energy installations. So huge opportunities there. And the campus of Berlin TXL currently has 140 infrastructure components that are smart, green, sustainable. So if you have a solution that could plug into that, if you want to have something that is showcased on an international stage at a lighthouse project such as Berlin TXL, we'd be happy to have you, because at the end of the day, we're looking to foster a community and living lab there. And actually looking at these trends and developing solutions for tomorrow will require us to think in a more collaborative and develop collaborative responses to and action processes to that. So we hope that you'll be part of that revolution, and we'll hope to see you in Berlin TXL. Thank you.